Now we get to the really exciting part, which is what do we do with these ratios? We can use them to find side lengths on a right triangle, even though we only have one side. Now remember, with the Pythagorean theorem, a squared plus b squared equals c squared. As long as you have two sides, you can find the third side. Well, with these trigonometric ratios, once we understand this proportionality, we can actually solve for a missing side with only one side as long as we have one of the angles. And this goes back to the congruence theorems. If you look at the right triangle I've given you here, it's actually angle side angle. So there's only one unique triangle that defines this, so we can find the other lengths. Well, let's see how it's done. Let's first look at the sine ratio. Let's remember that sine of an angle is equal to the opposite side divided by the hypotenuse. I'm going to write this out for the given 42-degree angle. All right, let's see. The 42-degree angle will be equal to the opposite side, and that will be, in this case, the side labeled D divided by the hypotenuse labeled C. Can I solve that? Doesn't look like I can because I have two variables that I don't know. I have one equation with D and C. Okay, so maybe I look at my other trig ratio. What I'm trying to do is walk you through how you would decide which one. My other trig ratio that I have on the screen here is cosine. How is cosine defined? Well, for this given triangle, cosine is the adjacent side, which I do have, the length of 9, divided by the hypotenuse, C. That is an equation that I can solve because I do have only one variable. So let's go ahead and walk through how you would solve this. So if you multiplied both sides by C, you would get C out of the denominator, all right? And you would have on the left-hand side, C times the cosine of 42 degrees would be equal to 9. All right, I'm going to write that out. C times the cosine of 42 degrees. You don't want to get those two C's mixed up, is equal to 9. And then divide both sides by the cosine of 42 degrees. You'll have your answer. All right. You grab your calculator and see what that is. I've got to be careful to do this, and you can try this on your own or pause this video. 9 divided by the cosine of 42. 9 divided by, and it depends on what your calculator is. I have to actually type in 42 before I hit cosine. Don't forget to hit equals. And make sure the answer is reasonable. I'm getting about 12.11. All right, which seems reasonable. The hypotenuse C should be longer than the leg. So to find the other length, D, you're like, well, how would I find D? Well, now you have two sides. You could go back and use the Pythagorean theorem. I want to point out one other thing. You didn't have to get stuck with cosine here. You could have used sine. How would we do that? Well, remember that if we know two of the angles, we can find the third angle. And we talked about this in the previous video, that this top angle would be 48 degrees. Notice if I talk about 48 degrees, then the sine of 48 would actually work because its opposite side is the one given 9 over C. And I can go through the same process to solve that particular equation and figure it out as well. I hope that that's helpful. And let's also remember that each triangle is its own unique situation to set up.